A morning rain fell soft on Rust Creek, a town long forgotten by time. A weary veteran and his loyal German shepherd stopped before an abandoned supermarket, its sign faded, its windows blind. Then Shadow froze, ears sharp, tail low, staring at the rusted loading dock. Something inside that wall was alive. But what if it wasn't just a sound? What if it was a secret, sealed for decades, waiting for the one man brave enough to open it? This was supposed to be his new beginning. Instead, it became the story that would test his faith, his scars, and the bond of one dog who never stopped believing. Before we begin, tell me, where are you watching from? Drop your country in the comments and subscribe for more stories of courage, loyalty, and second chances. An autumn rain drifted across the Kansas plains, thin as breath and cold as memory. The abandoned Prairie Mart crouched beneath a sky the color of steel, its faded signs still clinging to rusted bolts. Wind carried the smell of soil and iron as Adam Cole stood in the parking lot, hands buried in a worn jacket, eyes tracing the ghost of a name too stubborn to fade. At 42, Adam looked like a man carved from quiet endurance, lean, sun-weathered, with a scar curving along his right cheekbone. Not dramatic, just enough to mark him as someone who'd seen fire. His eyes, green and alert, moved with the caution of a soldier who still mapped exits even in peace. PTSD had turned vigilance into a language his body never forgot. He unfolded the document from his jacket. Interim custodianship agreement. Proof that he'd paid $9,000 in full for this building at the county's debt auction. Everything he owned, traded for a second chance. The title wasn't final yet. He had 6 months to restore and prove safety before full ownership. Custodian first, owner later, the clerk had said. Beside him, Shadow, his 8-year-old German shepherd, stood steady and watchful. Broad chest, storm gray coat with a silver muzzle, one nicked ear from a past that neither of them liked remembering. Shadow had once been a military K-9, trained, loyal, grounded. These days, he was more than that. He was Adam's anchor when the world went too quiet. Adam slid the key into the lock. It groaned, then gave. The door opened with a sigh of dust and damp air. He stepped inside, flashlight cutting through years of neglect. The market stretched vast and hollow, checkouts frozen mid-scan, conveyor belts drooping under grime. Aisle signs hung crooked, baking, canned goods, frozen, like fragments of an old prayer. Water dripped steadily from a ceiling seam, ticking like a heartbeat that refused to stop. Shadow sniffed the air and stilled, his tail leveled, ears forward, a low woof, deep and cautious. Adam followed the line of his nose, that faint metallic tang, like burned wires or lightning after a storm. He walked slowly, beam gliding across broken shelves, crumpled paper, and a child's tricycle missing one wheel. His mind worked in neat lists. Ceiling sound, plumbing dead, beams good. The voice of a soldier turned caretaker. Order fighting the chaos. At the rear, he reached the loading dock, a cavern of concrete and shadows. Something felt wrong. The old blueprint said there should have been a corridor to the cash room. Instead, a wall of solid steel filled the space, smooth welded from floor to ceiling. Not patched, not vandalized. Deliberate. Adam moved closer. The welds were perfect, professional. The wall felt cold beneath his palm, but his instincts felt heat. This wasn't in the plans. Shadow's ears twitched. The dog leaned forward, sniffed the lower seam, then stepped back, a faint growl vibrating through his chest. Adam's pulse steadied into the rhythm he'd learned in places where curiosity could kill. He took a slow breath, grounding himself. "Not today," he murmured. "We're not cutting corners this time." He photographed everything, wide shot, seam, corner, then filmed a slow panoramic video, narrating each detail for documentation. From his truck, he grabbed red plastic and taped it across the dock entrance. In thick black letters, he wrote, "Restricted area, under county custody." Shadow tilted his head, approving in silence. Adam called the county office. "This is Donna Pierce, Rust Creek Clerk's office," said a calm, capable voice. He pictured her instantly, late 50s, short hair, glasses on a chain, the sort who could balance a ledger and a bake sale without breaking stride. He introduced himself and explained. Donna's typing sounded like rain on wood. "You did right not touching it," she said. "Since you bought it, you're responsible. But until the deed's final, you're under custodianship. I'll flag your file and loop in the AG's liaison. Anything smells like trouble, you call me. My name's on the email, so no one loses it in the pile." Adam smiled faintly. "Copy that." Next, he called Harold Pike, his attorney, 60, compact, with a voice that sounded like coffee and oak. "Steel wall welded?" Harold asked. "Not a patch job?" "Professional work," Adam replied. "Then we wait. Tomorrow 10 a.m., I'll bring a locksmith and an environmental assessor. We'll get AG clearance before anyone pokes it. Until then, lock up, post signage, and keep quiet." "Got it," Harold chuckled. "And Adam, empty buildings sing. Don't let the tune crawl under your skin." When the call ended, Adam walked one last round through the aisles. He found a tiny sneaker with a dead LED and set it on the counter beside a faded Polaroid. "Thank you, Carla. Little relics of forgotten lives." He shut off the flashlight, letting his eyes adjust to the dark. Rain tapped the roof like distant footsteps. For a moment, the quiet pressed too close, the kind of silence that made the war feel near again. Then Shadow leaned his shoulder into Adam's leg, grounding him, as if saying, "I'm here. Keep breathing." Outside, the rain had slowed to a mist. Adam locked the hasp, tugged twice, and stepped back. Across the lot, a pickup idled under a broken streetlight. The driver, a lean man in a feed store cap, gave a lazy two-finger salute. Adam returned it. The truck lingered a heartbeat too long before rolling away. He noted it. Not fear, just observation. Back at his truck, Shadow jumped in beside him, shaking off the rain. Adam glanced through the windshield at the building, the windows blank as eyes that had seen too much. $9,000, he muttered. "Every cent I had. Better be worth it." Shadow huffed, softly, tail brushing his knee. Adam started the engine, headlights sweeping across the rain-dappled facade. "Tomorrow," he said, half to himself, "we come back with witnesses." As they pulled away, a sound echoed faintly from within the building, metal shifting, or maybe just the wind slipping through a vent. Shadow turned his head toward it, ears high, gaze steady. Adam didn't hear it clearly, but the dog did. And whatever was behind that welded wall heard them too. Morning came wrapped in fog, soft as milk glass over the flat fields of Kansas. Dew clung to the wire fences, and the old Prairie Mart sign glistened faintly as if trying to remember sunlight. Adam Cole parked his truck near the loading dock and sat for a moment, watching his breath ghost across the windshield. Shadow, curled in the passenger seat, opened one amber eye. When Adam reached for his thermos, the dog yawned, stretched, and leaned against the door like he'd already memorized the day's rhythm. At exactly 9, a county sedan rolled into the lot, followed by a tan pickup that looked too clean for the mud roads of Rust Creek. From it stepped Harold Pike, briefcase in hand, and a stocky locksmith named Reed Holloway, who carried his trade like a quiet religion. Tool bag, steel-toed boots, and an expression that said he trusted locks more than people. "Morning, Adam," Harold called, his breath clouding. "You look like you've been up all night." "Didn't sleep much," Adam admitted. "Wind rattled the roof." "Wind does that," Harold said. "Makes you think the building remembers." Before Adam could answer, another car turned in, a small gray sedan bearing the Cooperative Bank logo. A woman stepped out, mid-40s maybe, slender but purposeful. She wore a navy coat, neat scarf, and carried a file box like it weighed more than paper. Her dark hair was tied in a low bun, and the first thing Adam noticed was how her eyes, brown, clear, deliberate, scanned the property as if recognizing an old scar. She walked over and offered her hand. "Maya Brooks, Rust Creek Cooperative Bank. We insure county-held properties. Ms. Pierce said you'd be here." Her handshake was firm, cool from the morning air. "Used to work here, didn't you?" Adam asked, reading the flicker behind her calm. "I did," she said after a beat. 15 years ago, assistant finance manager before they closed." She looked toward the building's rear. "That's where the armored trucks used to pull in. Cash drop vault right behind the dock." Adam's eyes narrowed. "That's the section welded shut." Maya frowned slightly. "It was supposed to have been removed before the closure." She set down her box, pulled out a folded blueprint, stamped Prairie Mart Financial Division 2007. Here, see? The drop vault connected directly to the loading corridor, reinforced by hydraulic hinges. If it's sealed, someone did it on purpose. Reed ran a calloused hand along his chin. Armored drops use hydraulic bolts. You'd smell oil even decades later, like old engine rooms. Shadow, already sniffing along the dock seam, let out a short bark, sharp, single, certain. His hackles rose just enough to make Adam's pulse spike. "Shadow," Adam said softly. The dog stopped but kept staring at the steel. A faint smell reached them, metallic and wrong, like ozone mixed with burnt oil. Reed crouched, tracing the lower weld line with a gloved finger. "Something back there still sealed tight," he muttered. "Pressure, maybe. Could be an old pneumatic system holding." Harold lifted a brow. "Which means we don't touch it until the AG gives written clearance." Adam nodded. "Chain of custody." Maya watched them all, arms folded. "Back then, we handled weekend cash holds in that vault, sometimes over 200,000 in bills. The company said they'd clear it before liquidation, but I guess no one ever checked." Her voice faltered, as if speaking it made the memory heavier. "Why'd you leave?" Adam asked quietly. She smiled without humor. "Because when a company buries its own money, someone else always gets buried with it." Reed whistled low. "Lady's got a point." They spent the next hour documenting photos, measurements, chain tags. Reed placed a small thermal sensor against the weld. No active heat, no electrical flow, just a faint vibration like breath caught in the wall. When he removed it, a thin wisp of oil scent rose. Hydraulic fluid aged into something ghostly. Maya covered her nose. "That smell? Ozone." Adam met her eyes. "Yeah, same as yesterday." The dog sneezed and backed away, circling until he settled near Adam's boots. It was the same pattern he used in the service. Unknown odor, stay close, wait for command. By noon, the fog had thinned. They agreed to halt further probing until the state's environmental assessor could confirm the interior safe. Maya gathered her folders and looked around once more. "You did the right thing, documenting everything. If this is still part of the old cash system, it's technically under banking regulation." "Meaning?" Harold asked. "Meaning if you find anything, even bolts worth scrap, you don't move it without a federal observer. Otherwise, it's classified as tampering with financial property." "Good thing we like paperwork," Harold said dryly. When she turned to leave, Shadow stood up, tail wagging once. She smiled down at him, the expression softening her features. "You're a good one," she said. "I used to have a shepherd like you when this place was alive. He'd follow the store manager everywhere, even the loading bays." Shadow tilted his head, as if recognizing the shape of a memory too. After everyone left, the lot fell quiet. The wind picked up again, carrying the dry hum of power lines and the faint creak of old metal. Adam rechecked the locks, positioned the motion cameras, and sat on the truck bed with his notebook. The smell of ozone still lingered faintly in the air. He wrote one line beneath today's date: "Wall welded. Odor, electrical plus oil. Maya Brooks, former finance manager, chain intact." He stayed until dusk, the light draining from the fields in slow gradients. The wind shifted colder, sliding through the broken gutters with a voice that sounded almost human. Shadow pricked his ears at every groan of metal. Adam forced a breath through his teeth. "It's just wind," he said, mostly to himself. "Just the wind." He decided to sleep on site, wanting to guard the building overnight. The heater in his truck hummed softly, filling the cab with warmth. Shadow lay curled beside him, the steady rhythm of the dog's breathing, the only heartbeat that made sense. But when the roof moaned again, a hollow metallic thrum like distant rotor blades, the world tilted. Adam's chest seized, the memory flooding back. Desert wind, the whine of engines, the blinding sandstorm swallowing everything except the scream of metal above. He gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white, breath coming in jagged bursts. Shadow shifted immediately, pressing his head against Adam's knee, firm, steady, present. His weight anchored the man to the here and now. Adam's lips trembled. "Easy, buddy. It's just wind." The dog's eyes stayed fixed, calm and unwavering. The panic began to ebb. Adam reached down, fingers finding the familiar ridge of fur along Shadow's neck. He counted his breaths until the noise in his mind slowed. Outside, the rain returned, whispering against the roof in a rhythm too soft to threaten. Adam leaned back in the seat, exhaustion winning over fear. Shadow rested his head on Adam's thigh, ears still half alert. Sometime after midnight, the truck's cabin fogged with their shared warmth. The security camera light blinked red across the lot, steady, constant. Then a sound rose beneath the wind. Not a groan, not an echo, but a faint metallic hiss as if pressure released somewhere deep within the dock. Shadow's ears lifted. He stared toward the sealed wall, every muscle quiet but alive. Adam stirred, half awake. "What is it?" he murmured, not opening his eyes. The dog didn't move, didn't growl, only listened. Another breath of ozone drifted through the air, thin and cold as electricity. Shadow's tail twitched once. He pressed closer to Adam, the faintest tremor in his chest, and waited. Not afraid, just ready. Outside, the fog thickened again, curling around the silent prairie mart like smoke from a machine that hadn't run in decades, or one that had just started running again. Morning broke in Rust Creek under a dim, amber sky, the kind of light that promised a storm later but held its peace for now. The air was thick with the metallic tang of rain and rust, and the prairie mart loomed like a relic waiting for judgment. Adam Cole stood by the loading dock, with Shadow at his side, the dog's coat damp and gleaming in the gray light. Today wasn't about curiosity anymore. It was procedure. Harold Pike arrived first, punctual as a courthouse bell, briefcase in one hand and thermos in the other. He looked sharper than usual, gray suit, tie straight, his expression that of a man who'd read enough depositions to sense when truth was about to get uncomfortable. "Got the AG clearance?" he said, patting his jacket pocket. "And a new face coming to supervise." The new face turned out to be Deputy Paul Reed, no relation to the locksmith. He was in his late 30s, tall, solid built, with a lawman's bearing that came from years of patrolling small towns that never truly slept. His short blonde hair was neatly cropped under a tan sheriff's hat, his jaw tight as fence wire. His uniform was crisp, but his boots were dusted with red clay. A man who walked his roots. When he spoke, his voice was calm, but his eyes measured everyone like entries in a ledger. "Morning, folks," he said, flashing a badge that glinted briefly in the weak sun. "County wants an extra pair of eyes while you open her up. Liability protocol." Harold's polite nod masked his skepticism. "Appreciate it, Deputy. We're just documenting and securing evidence for state review." Deputy Reed gave a half smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Good. Wouldn't want anyone accidentally finding something they shouldn't." Maya Brooks arrived next, carrying 2 folders and the weariness of someone who hadn't slept. Her coat was darker than yesterday's, hair tied tighter, eyes shadowed with unease. "I called the bank," she said to Harold softly. "Their archive confirms my signature on those old 2002 balance sheets. If anything inside links back, it's going to be ugly." Adam watched her for a beat, recognizing the tremor in her hands. Not fear exactly, but the weight of seeing a ghost you once helped bury. "You didn't put the money there," he said quietly. "You just worked for people who did." Her answering look carried both gratitude and guilt. "That doesn't make it any easier." Reed Holloway, the locksmith, crouched near the welded plate with a portable plasma cutter and a set of cold chisels that gleamed like surgical tools. The man rarely spoke more than a sentence at a time, but his eyes were steady, his hands unhurried. A small burn scar trailed along his right forearm, the mark of an old shop accident he never bothered to hide. "You sure you're ready?" Reed asked, glancing at Adam. Adam nodded. "Let's see what 20 years sealed up." The torch hissed to life, blue-white and bright as judgment. Sparks showered the floor, lighting the dust in brief constellations. Shadow backed a few feet but stayed alert, ears flicking at every sound, the smell of scorched metal mixed with that same undercurrent of ozone and oil. Sharper now, almost alive. When the last line was cut, Reed pried the steel free. Behind it lay a large industrial safe, bolted into the concrete, its hinges thick as a man's wrist. The paint was blistered but intact. On its face, a faded label read, "Heartland Reclaim, Sioux Property Control." Harold exhaled through his nose. "Heartland Reclaim," he said. That scrap metal outfit the feds investigated back in '04, money laundering through material exports. Guess they didn't launder everything, Adams said. Reed worked the dial, his ear close, movement small and exact. After a few tense minutes, there was a dull click. The safe door groaned as he pulled it open, and the scent that escaped was unmistakable. Aged oil, metal filings, and time. Inside were 4 plastic containers, each sealed with tape-stamped Inventory 2002, and a ledger bound in black leather, its spine cracked but legible. No bills, no bars, just weighty silence. Maya stepped closer, her breath unsteady. She wiped a gloved finger over the ledger's cover. The embossed initials read, HRC Financial Division. She hesitated before opening it. Inside were pages of microfilm envelopes and neat handwritten columns, deposits, withdrawals, code numbers. But halfway through, her expression changed. She touched one sheet lightly, her finger trembling. "That's my handwriting," she whispered. "I signed this. They made me falsify balance statements during the last quarter. We were told it was for inventory rounding. I didn't know it went through Heartland." Harold leaned closer, squinting. "That's not rounding, Ms. Brooks. Those are shell accounts." Shadow whined softly, pacing near the safe, as if sensing the tension in the air. Adam crouched to steady him, his hand resting on the dog's back. Maya drew a sharp breath. "Look, these," she said, pointing to a code column. "These refer to cargo shipments. Heartland Reclaim was exporting more than metal. The FBI said they never found records." "Well," Harold muttered, "looks like they were welded shut instead." Adam pulled out his phone and began recording a continuous video sweep. The safe, its contents, timestamps, every face present. He spoke clearly, methodically. Discovery of sealed safe at Prairie Mart property, Rust Creek. Witnesses, Harold Pike, attorney, Maya Brooks, former employee, Deputy Paul Reed, County Sheriff's Department. All evidence sealed and intact. Deputy Reed stepped forward, gloved hand on the safe door. "Mind if I take a closer look?" "By protocol," Harold said evenly. "State officials handle evidence transfer. We're just securing it." Reed's jaw flexed. "Right, just making sure." He scanned the ledger, eyes pausing longer than necessary on the microfilm box. "Shame about the money not being cash, huh?" Adam caught the tone, half joke, half measure. "Sometimes paper's worth more than gold," he said. Reed smiled thinly. "If it ever sees daylight." For a moment, the air hung heavy between them. Then Adam sealed the containers back inside the safe, taped the edges, and signed across the seams. Harold filmed the process. Maya typed a note to the AG's office. When they finished, Reed Holloway wiped his hands and packed his tools. "That's as far as we go today," he said. "You'll need hazmat clearance for full retrieval." "Appreciate it," Adam replied. He turned to Maya. "You okay?" She nodded faintly. "I think I've been waiting 15 years to see that ledger again." As they locked the building, the wind began to rise, pushing dark clouds from the west. The storm was finally coming. Harold loaded the evidence case into his trunk while Maya lingered by the truck, arms crossed, staring at the gray silhouette of the building. Deputy Reed stood a few yards away, speaking softly into his radio. When Adam looked over, Reed ended the call too quickly and smiled. "Just checking in," he said. "Sure," Adam said. "We'll file everything to the AG tonight." "Of course." Reed tipped his hat. "Take care now." His cruiser rolled away slow, tires crunching on gravel. Adam watched until the car disappeared down the road. Shadow barked once, a low, uncertain sound, then went silent. "Yeah," Adam murmured, scratching behind the dog's ear. "Didn't smell like just duty, did it?" Lightning flickered distantly, white against gray. He looked back at the welded space now open and taped. The secrets of Heartland Reclaim, finally breathing after 2 decades underground. In his gut, Adam knew the storm ahead wouldn't just be weather. Rain had been falling since dusk, the kind that didn't pour but whispered, steady, cold, and endless. It slid down the rusted Prairie Mart sign and pooled in the cracks of the asphalt like silver veins. Inside the vast, hollow building, Adam Cole sat beneath a flickering lantern, its weak glow casting a fragile circle of warmth around him. The air smelled of wet cement and old dust. Shadow lay at his feet, silent and watchful, his fur damp, his ears rising at every stray sound. Adam had grown used to the quiet, but tonight something in it felt wrong, stretched too thin, as if waiting to break. He checked his camera feeds again. Nothing. Just darkness and the reflection of the rain. Yet years in the field had taught him that danger rarely announced itself. It waited until you looked away. A sound broke the pattern, metal on metal, faint but distinct, near the garden center doors. Shadow's head snapped up, muscles taut, the low hum in his throat more alert than threatening. Adam rose slowly, flashlight in hand. "Easy, boy," he murmured, though his own pulse betrayed calm. When the beam cut across the far aisle, a small figure froze. A girl, soaked, trembling, thin as a shadow. She couldn't have been more than 16. Her hoodie hung loose on her, sleeves dripping rain, sneakers leaving pale mud prints behind. She clutched a plastic bag that sagged with water and shame. For a heartbeat, neither moved. Then she tried to run. Adam's voice stopped her, low but firm, the kind of voice that didn't ask, only understood. He told her to wait, that he wasn't going to hurt her. The girl hesitated, eyes darting between him and the dog. Her face was pale, dotted with freckles, hair plastered to her forehead. When she spoke, her words cracked with cold. She hadn't come for trouble, just food. He could have called the sheriff. He didn't. Instead, he motioned toward the lantern's circle of light. "Come on," he said quietly. "You look like you haven't eaten in days." Shadow stood back, but watched her with steady eyes, his tail still. The girl moved hesitantly closer, one cautious step at a time. In the small office at the store's corner, Adam handed her half a sandwich and a bottle of water. She devoured both before remembering to breathe. Her name was Tess, 16. Her mother had worked at the mill until the layoffs last month. When the rent ran out, so did their luck. The woman had gone to Wichita, looking for work at a roadside motel, promising to send money soon. Tess was supposed to stay with a friend, but the friend's father didn't want another mouth. So she'd been drifting, train yards, empty lots, nights spent waiting for something that never came. While she spoke, Shadow moved closer and curled beside her chair, resting his chin on his paws. Tess reached down, almost afraid, and brushed the top of his ear. The dog didn't move. He just breathed, slow and calm, as if letting her borrow a little of that peace. She smiled faintly. "He knows I'm not dangerous," she whispered. Adam nodded. "He's a good judge of people." The rain deepened, tapping against the windows in slow rhythm. For a while, they sat in silence, just the soft glow of the lantern between them. Then Tess looked up, hesitant but urgent. "You should know," she said. "Someone else has been here at night." That caught his attention. She told him she'd seen the sheriff, the blonde one, Reed, near the loading dock a few nights ago. He wasn't alone. 2 other men were with him, carrying tool cases and what looked like a steel cutter. They moved like people who didn't want to be seen. Tess had hidden behind the fence, close enough to hear the hum of their machine and see the sparks light the rain. After a few minutes, they'd packed up and driven off toward the creek road. Adam didn't interrupt. He just listened, each detail stitching itself into the quiet dread forming in his mind. If Reed was cutting through the dock at night, then he wasn't guarding evidence. He was trying to erase it. "You're sure?" he asked at last. Tess nodded. "I almost asked them for help," she said softly. "But the dog in their truck started barking. It didn't sound like your kind of dog." He believed her. Everything about her, the way she flinched at thunder, the way she said, "please," without realizing it, spoke of someone who didn't know how to lie. Adam felt something twist inside, the old ache of wanting to protect something fragile in a world that didn't care for fragile things. He told her she could rest there for the night. There was no safety outside, and he wouldn't turn her in. She looked at him, unsure, as if waiting for the moment he changed his mind. But he didn't. When she finally slept on the old sofa, Shadow lay near her feet like a sentry. Adam stood at the doorway, phone pressed to his ear, listening to the ringtone before Maya answered. Her voice was tired, but it sharpened when he told her about Reed and the men with the cutter. "That explains why the AG's office called," she said. "Someone tried to access our video files remotely yesterday." "Then it's time we go public," he replied. "Public? Adam, that's dangerous." So is silence. Maya hesitated, then gave in. She would contact Claire Benton, a journalist from the Rust Creek Chronicle, the same woman who had exposed the county bank scandal last year. If anyone could bring sunlight to rot, it was Claire. Adam agreed. They'd send her everything by morning. Hours later, dawn arrived like a sigh. The rain had softened into mist, painting the parking lot in pale gray. Tess stirred, her blanket slipping from her shoulder. Adam handed her a cup of coffee. She blinked at it, smiling shyly. "You sound like my mom when you talk like that," she said. He chuckled quietly. She must be a smart woman. She says lies rot faster in sunlight. She's right. By the time the sky turned gold, Maya had texted, "Claire has the files. She's running the story tonight." Tess packed her few things, a worn backpack, a small photo tucked in her sleeve. Adam offered her a 20 and directions to the youth shelter down on Main Street. She took it reluctantly, then, after a pause, wrapped her arms around him in a quick, awkward hug. Shadow stood beside them, tail wagging once, as if to give permission. When Tess finally left, disappearing into the morning haze, Adam felt the quiet return, not empty, but charged, like the air before lightning. The truth was out now, carried by a voice that couldn't be silenced. And though the storm ahead would be fierce, he had what mattered most: a loyal dog, a clear conscience, and the kind of courage that grows when you choose compassion over fear. Somewhere beyond the mist, the first headline was already being written. The storm that had hovered over Rust Creek for days finally broke, and the rain came like needles, fast, slanted, angry. Thunder rolled across the flatlands, echoing against the tin roof of the old Prairie Mart. Inside, Adam Cole sat alone at his desk, the glow from his laptop flickering over tired eyes. The story had gone live that morning. Whistleblower veteran exposes decades-old corporate cover-up. His name wasn't printed, but anyone in town who cared enough to guess already knew. The comments section was chaos, half the town calling him a hero, the other half calling him a liar. Maya had warned him to leave Rust Creek for a few days, but he couldn't. The store wasn't just evidence anymore. It was his responsibility, his battlefield, his home, and the last thing in his life he still believed he could defend. Shadow slept near the door, chest rising slow and steady, tail twitching with every clap of thunder. The sound didn't bother him, storms rarely did. But when the phone rang, a sharp mechanical noise slicing through the rain, Shadow's ears perked instantly. Adam glanced at the screen. Unknown number. He hesitated, then answered. A man's voice, smooth and deliberate, filled the line. "Mr. Cole, I'll make this quick. You've stirred up something that should have stayed buried. Walk away now, and you won't regret it." "Who is this?" "You already know who we represent. $2 million, cash, untaxed. You hand over the building, the footage, everything. You and that dog disappear quietly." Adam said nothing. The rain beat harder, rattling the windows. "Don't be foolish, Mr. Cole. You think the feds can protect you? You think this is about some old company? This goes higher than—" The line went dead. Adam sat motionless, the hum of the storm filling the silence. He could almost hear the echo of his heartbeat against the concrete walls. Shadow rose, sensing the change, moving closer to his side. Adam reached down and scratched behind the dog's ear. "We're not for sale," he murmured. He checked the cameras again. All 6 feeds still live. The backup generator thrummed quietly. Outside, lightning flashed white over the flooded parking lot, turning puddles into mirrors of fire. By midnight, fatigue pulled at him. He was about to shut the system down when Shadow growled, a deep, low rumble that came from instinct, not fear. Adam froze, scanning the monitors. One of the exterior feeds blinked, static, then darkness. The power line at the back corner had gone out. "Not tonight," he whispered. He clipped his body cam to his vest, grabbed the flashlight in his sidearm, and moved toward the main corridor. The air smelled of rain and rust and something sharper. Ozone again. Shadow padded beside him, silent but coiled like a spring. The first impact came from the east door, metal shrieking as it was forced open. Then another, a thud, followed by bootsteps, 3, maybe 4 people, moving fast. Their flashlights cut across the aisles, white beams slicing through the dark. Adam ducked behind a counter, the camera on his chest recording everything. "Spread out," a voice hissed. "Get to the vault room." Shadow's growl deepened. Adam gave a short signal, a hand gesture the dog remembered from their military days. Wait. But when one of the intruders stepped too close, Shadow lunged, a flash of muscle and teeth. The man shouted, stumbling back as the dog latched onto his sleeve, dragging him down. "Shoot him!" another yelled. The crack of gunfire split the air. Adam moved instinctively, returning fire once, twice, aiming to disable, not kill. A bullet whined off metal and ricocheted into the rafters. Shadow yelped, a sharp, short sound, and Adam's heart seized. He saw the streak of blood along the dog's shoulder, but no limp, no fall. Shadow turned back, snarling, guarding the narrow passage that led to the vault. In the strobe of lightning through the roof, Adam caught a glimpse of one face, the unmistakable sharp jaw, the pale hair, the deputy's badge glinting under the hood. Reed. He was shouting at the others. "Forget him! Cut through the wall! Destroy the vault before they get here!" Adam shouted back, voice echoing through the hollow aisles. "You're not taking another step, Reed." Reed fired once toward the voice, shattering a fluorescent tube. Sparks rained down like falling stars. The light from Adam's lantern flickered, but the body cam kept recording. Every second, every shot, every voice. Shadow lunged again, forcing one of the masked men to drop the cutter. The smell of burning metal filled the air. Another bolt of lightning flashed, and in that moment, Adam saw Reed, sweat on his brow, fury twisting his mouth, one hand clutching a lighter, the other holding a gas can. "Don't do it!" Adam yelled. Reed's eyes met his, cold, resigned, the look of a man cornered by his own greed. "They'll kill me anyway," he muttered, voice shaking. Then he dropped the lighter. Flames bloomed instantly, licking the spilled fuel, spreading fast across the wet floor. The heat roared. Adam grabbed a fire blanket from the wall and charged forward, smothering the first blaze while Shadow circled, barking furiously to drive the attackers back. Reed tried to flee but slipped on the oil-slick floor. The others ran, two men scrambling through the broken door into the rain. Adam didn't chase them. He pulled Reed back from the fire, handcuffed him with the zip ties he kept in his pocket, and dragged him toward the exit. Smoke filled the air. The sprinklers, dead for years, came to life as if the building itself refused to burn. Water poured from the ceiling, mixing with fire and thunder until the world became steam and sound. Outside, sirens wailed, first distant, then near. Shadow limped beside Adam, blood dark. Against his fur but eyes bright, tail low but wagging. Adam knelt, pressing a hand to the dog's neck. "You did good, soldier," he whispered. "You held the line." When the FBI convoy arrived, black SUVs cutting through the storm, the scene was chaos. Agents and windbreakers rushed inside, weapons drawn, flashlights sweeping the corridors. Within minutes, they had the building secured. Reed, soaked and shivering, was handcuffed and loaded into the back of a federal vehicle, his eyes hollow, his badge stripped from his chest. Agent Laura Hensley, mid-40s, dark hair pulled into a tight braid, sharp eyes that missed nothing, approached Adam. Her raincoat clung to her shoulders, her tone professional but not unkind. "Mr. Cole," she said, "we've been tracking this operation for months. You just gave us the evidence we needed." Adam nodded, still catching his breath. "All on the body cam," he said. "Everything." Her gaze softened when she noticed Shadow, bleeding but calm. "We'll get your partner medical attention right away." "He's more than a partner," Adam said quietly. By dawn, the rain eased. The fire was out. The vault still stood, scorched but intact, the ledger safe within. Adam sat on the tailgate of an ambulance, a blanket around his shoulders, watching the sky turn from black to gray to gold. Shadow rested beside him, his bandaged shoulder rising and falling with steady breaths. Maya arrived, coat soaked, eyes wide with both relief and anger. "You could have died," she said, voice breaking. He managed a tired smile. "Wouldn't be the first time?" "You're impossible." "Maybe," he said, "but at least now it's over." She looked toward the agents loading evidence crates into vans. "No, Adam, for people like us, it's never really over." He followed her gaze, the vault, the flashing lights, the town waking to sirens, and felt the weight of her words settle deep. But as Shadow leaned against his leg, warm and alive, he found something steadier than fear, purpose. The night had been full of fire, betrayal, and noise. But as the first light of morning broke through the clouds, it felt like peace. Spring came late to Kansas that year, slow and uncertain, like a man learning to trust again. The fields around Rust Creek had only just begun to green when the news broke. State of Kansas versus Heartland Reclaim Industries. Court date confirmed. It had been 3 months since the night of fire and gunshots at Prairie Mart, and yet the echoes of that storm still lingered in Adam Cole's bones. The burns had healed, the bruises had faded, but the silence after heroism, that strange mix of relief and emptiness, stayed longer than pain ever could. The trial took place in Topeka, inside the stone-gray walls of Shawnee County Courthouse, a building older than anyone could remember. The air there always smelled faintly of varnish and paper, the scent of bureaucracy and consequence. Adam wore his only suit, the one he'd bought for his father's funeral years ago. It fit tighter now, shoulders broader, but the weight on his chest wasn't from the fabric. Beside him sat Maya Brooks, steady and composed, her hair tied in a low bun, a dark navy blazer softening the lines of exhaustion on her face. She had lost weight over the months. Too many long nights writing reports, too many cups of bitter coffee. At the front, the judge, Honorable Thomas K. Behrens, looked like someone carved from limestone, square-jawed and unshakably calm. He had the manner of a man who'd seen too much corruption to be surprised by any of it. Rows of attorneys filled the benches behind him, and reporters waited like vultures, pens poised to turn justice into headlines. The Attorney General's representative, Elena Morales, was the kind of woman people noticed even when she didn't speak. Mid-40s, Latina, with sleek black hair and a gaze sharp enough to make liars flinch. She walked to the center of the courtroom and began outlining the scheme. How Heartland Reclaim had laundered millions through shell construction firms. How county officials, including Deputy Reed, had buried evidence. And how the ledger recovered by Adam Cole had cracked open a 20-year fraud. When Adam was called to testify, the room fell quiet. He stood, voice low but steady, recounting the events of that night. The bribe call, the break-in, the fire. Every word felt heavier than it sounded. The jury watched, transfixed, when footage from his body cam was played. Shadow leaping into the frame, sparks flying, chaos and loyalty preserved in pixels. At the end of the trial, Judge Behrens leaned forward, his tone grave yet almost kind. "Mr. Cole," he said, "you reminded this court of something we often forget. That integrity isn't about grand gestures. It's about doing the right thing when no one's watching." When the verdict came, it was decisive. Heartland Reclaim's executives were sentenced. Reed faced prison. The assets seized amounted to nearly $40 million, to be redistributed under federal oversight. Adam didn't stay to hear the applause. He stepped outside, into the soft Kansas wind, and breathed for the first time in months. Shadow, healed and strong again, stood beside him, head held high, fur glinting gold in the sunlight. 2 weeks later, the letter arrived, embossed with the seal of the Kansas Attorney General. Adam and Maya were being honored for exceptional integrity and contribution to public safety. Along with the recognition came something unexpected, a community safety and rehabilitation. Grant of $150,000 meant to restore the abandoned supermarket into something living again. At first, Adam wasn't sure what to do with it. He had never thought of himself as a builder. But one evening, as he and Maya walked through the gutted aisles of Prairie Mart, now stripped of caution tape and smoke stains, she said something that stayed with him. "This place was never cursed," she said, running her fingers along a cracked wall. "It just needed someone honest enough to give it a new story." That night, they began sketching plans on a dusty table, rough lines turning into blueprints, ideas turning into possibilities. Within a month, volunteers from town joined them. Retired mechanics, farmers, single mothers, even a few veterans who had seen Adam's story on the news. The empty building began to breathe again. Walls repainted, shelves rebuilt, laughter echoing where silence used to live. By the following spring, the sign above the entrance read, Rust Creek Market and Kitchen, a cooperative grocery and cafe that sold local produce, baked bread, and offered free coffee to anyone wearing a veteran's cap. Maya managed the books. Adam handled logistics. Shadow had his own spot by the door, a small bed under a sign that said Chief of Security. But the grant was only the beginning. When the Department of Justice finalized asset restitution, a year later, Adam received another letter, this time from the U.S. District Office. The DOJ had approved a civilian share under the federal whistleblower reward provision. Adam and Maya would receive 12% of recovered assets, roughly $4.8 million paid over 3 years. Adam stared at the number for a long time before saying a word. Money had never been part of his plan. Still, when he told Maya, she smiled quietly. Maybe now, Rust Creek gets more than justice. Maybe it gets hope. He didn't buy a new truck, or move to the city, or travel. Instead, he invested it all back into the town. 3 projects grew from that check, each born from a part of his own healing. First was Rust Creek Market and Kitchen, expanded to hire 50 locals, half of them single parents and veterans. The second became Veterans Trade Program, where Adam taught carpentry and mechanical repair. Hands that fix, hearts that heal, the sign read. And the third, dearest to him, was Shadow's Pantry, a food bank offering free meals to children and the elderly. Every Friday, they handed out warm soup, bread, and care packages stamped with a paw print. On opening day, the mayor gave a short speech calling Adam a man who turned war into peace and ruin into purpose. Adam didn't like speeches, but he stood there anyway, his hand resting on Shadow's head, the dog's calm presence grounding him as always. When the applause came, he thought of all the nights that had nearly broken him, and how they had led here to this moment of quiet redemption. In the crowd stood Tess, now 18, hair tied back with a red ribbon, wearing the store's green apron. She was the first employee of Rust Creek Market, responsible for stocking shelves and running deliveries. She caught Adam's eye and grinned, holding up a clipboard. "We're short on eggs again," she said, half laughing, half complaining. Adam chuckled. "You run a store, Tess. You'll never stop being short on something." Maya walked up behind them, carrying a box of receipts and pretending not to smile. "Maybe faith's the only thing we're not short on." The crowd began to thin as sunset painted the sky in soft amber. Adam stepped outside, standing on the same cracked pavement where he'd once faced down fire and greed. The air smelled of bread and rain. Across the parking lot, someone had planted sunflowers, tall, bright, defiant. Shadow sat beside him, older now, muzzle grayer, but eyes still alive. Adam reached down and patted his head. "You know," he said softly, "we did all right, didn't we?" Shadow looked up, tail thumping once, slow and content. As dusk fell over Rust Creek, the neon sign flickered on, Rust Creek Market and Kitchen. Inside, people laughed, music played, and light spilled out through the glass doors. What had once been a ruin now glowed like a lantern in the heart of a town learning to believe again. And for the first time in years, Adam felt whole, not because of money or justice, but because he had built something that would outlast both. 3 years had passed since the night the fire almost swallowed Rust Creek whole, and time, as it does in small towns, had turned tragedy into story, and story into legend. What had once been a decaying supermarket at the edge of Kansas Prairie was now the beating heart of the town. The Rust Creek Market and Kitchen stood proud and glowing, its red brick facade lined with flower boxes and an old flag that fluttered gently in the spring wind. Inside, the smell of bread, coffee, and cinnamon filled the aisles where silence used to live. Adam Cole walked through the automatic doors that still made a tired hiss every time they opened. His reflection flickered in the glass, older now, with streaks of gray threading through his beard, but his posture steady, shoulders still square from a life that had never let him slouch. He wore a plain shirt rolled at the sleeves, his hands roughened not by war this time, but by work. Beside him trotted Shadow, 12 years old now, fur silvered along the muzzle, gait slower but still dignified. His left shoulder bore a faint scar, the memory of a night that had changed everything. He wore a small brass tag engraved with one word, honor. The market was alive with movement. Near the bakery counter, Tess Harper, now 21, stacked loaves into neat rows, her red hair tied up under a green apron. She moved with purpose, humming softly to an old country tune playing on the speakers. Her freckles had faded into the sun-browned confidence of someone who'd earned her place in the world. At the checkout desk sat Maya Brooks, reading through ledgers, glasses low on her nose, her once jet-black hair now streaked with silver. She still carried that quiet sharpness, a mind built for precision. But her laugh came easier these days, especially when Adam walked by, pretending not to notice her watching him. Rust Creek itself had changed too. Where empty storefronts once stood, new shops had opened: a thrift bookstore, a veteran-run mechanic shop, a diner named The Lantern. The town that had nearly vanished was now known across Kansas as the place that built itself back up. Reporters came, then tourists, then donors. But for Adam, it was never about fame. It was about keeping promises to himself, to Maya, to the dog who never stopped standing guard. That morning, the Kansas State Governor's motorcade rolled down Main Street, escorted by a line of veterans on bikes. The town gathered outside the market under banners that read, "Hope Restored." The ceremony was simple but heartfelt. On a small stage built by the carpentry trainees from Adam's Veterans Trade Program, the governor, a tall, broad-shouldered man with kind eyes named Samuel Grayson, pinned a medal to Adam's lapel, the Kansas Civilian Medal of Honor. Grayson, in his 60s, carried himself with the quiet grace of a man who'd spent his life balancing politics and compassion. His hair was silver, his voice warm. When he spoke, it was slow, deliberate, meant to be heard even by the oldest ears in the back row. "This medal," he said, "isn't for a man who found gold. It's for one who found courage to rebuild and made us all remember what that word means." Applause rose, rolling through the crowd like wind over wheat. Then came the surprise announcement: a $500,000 state grant to expand the Veterans Trade Program and fund a new branch, the Rust Creek Rescue and Animal Rehabilitation Center. The idea had been Maya's, but Adam had drawn the first sketch: a place where rescue animals could be paired with veterans struggling to start over. It was, in a way, a tribute to the bond that had saved him. When the time came for the last part of the ceremony, the governor turned toward Shadow. "And for service beyond measure," Grayson said, "for loyalty that no medal can equal, today we honor Shadow, service dog of honor." The crowd erupted. Children clapped. Elders wiped their eyes. Shadow, now nearly blind in one eye, tilted his head as a small silver medallion was slipped over his collar. He didn't understand the noise, but he wagged his tail once, slow and steady. Adam knelt beside him, hand resting on the old shepherd's neck. "You deserve it, partner," he whispered. After the ceremony, the crowd dispersed. The mayor shook Adam's hand. Volunteers cleaned up chairs. Tess and Maya returned inside to close the registers. The sun dipped lower, casting the market's windows in gold. The once broken sign that now read, "Rust Creek Market, built by those who refused to give up," reflected the evening light like a promise kept. Adam sat on the front steps, his elbows on his knees, Shadow lying beside him, breathing slow and heavy. The smell of freshly baked bread drifted from inside. Down the street, a group of kids laughed, chasing each other around the fountain the town had built in memory of the year Hope came home. Maya stepped outside, holding 2 mugs of coffee. She handed one to him without a word and sat down. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" she said. Adam nodded. "Never thought I'd live to see it." "Guess you didn't need to find buried treasure after all," she teased gently. He smiled, eyes softening. "We didn't find treasure," he said quietly, looking at Shadow. "We built it." The dog's ear twitched at the sound of his voice. Adam reached down and rubbed his fur. "You see, buddy, we made it." Shadow gave a faint huff, something between a sigh and a bark, and laid his head on Adam's boot. The sky above them had turned a deep, bruised violet, the kind of color that belonged only to places where people had fought hard to earn peace. Inside, Tess was turning off lights one by one. The aisles glowed in fading amber, and in the last flicker, the reflection of Shadow's collar caught the light, that small, shining symbol of faith, loyalty, and years that all mattered. When the final door locked and the market went quiet, Adam rose, slipped his hands into his pockets, and looked back at the sign one last time. Below it stood a small granite marker, newly installed that morning. Its inscription read, "In honor of Shadow, the dog who guarded not gold, but hope." The camera, if there had been one, would have pulled back then, the market glowing softly in the twilight, the silhouettes of man and dog outlined against the Kansas sky, the quiet hum of life where silence used to live. And somewhere in that stillness, Rust Creek exhaled, a town reborn by kindness, loyalty, and a shepherd's unwavering heart. Long after the crowds went home and the market lights dimmed, Rust Creek settled into the kind of peace only hard-won places ever know. Seasons turned, but the legacy remained, not in vaults or medals, but in laughter echoing through the aisles, in veterans finding purpose again, in children running past the Shadows Pantry sign with crumbs on their hands and joy in their hearts. Adam's story wasn't about luck or fate, it was about courage, the quiet, stubborn kind that shows up even when no one's watching. It was about a dog who guarded hope, a woman who believed redemption was possible, and a town that chose to build rather than bury its pain. Years later, travelers still stop by Rust Creek Market, not for groceries, but to feel something, to stand where miracles had walked on 4 legs and 2 weary boots. They said the place had a presence, a warmth that couldn't be explained by lights or paint. Maybe it was faith, maybe it was grace, or maybe, as Adam once said, God doesn't always send miracles wrapped in thunder or gold. Sometimes he sends them as second chances, in a stranger's kindness, in a loyal friend, or in the courage to begin again. So if you're hearing this now, wherever you are, whatever storm you're facing, remember, miracles don't always arrive to rescue us. Sometimes they wait for us to build them. One act of honesty, one moment of faith, one hand extended in compassion. That's how heaven moves through ordinary people like you and me. If this story touched your heart, please share it so others can feel the same light. Leave a comment telling us what hope means to you. And subscribe for more tales of faith, courage, and the quiet miracles that still happen every day. May God bless you and your family with strength, peace, and the faith to keep building, no matter how broken the world may seem.